the support staff, the office people, the parents, the community, everyone is involved and invested in what that school is about. The next one, change needs to occur at the broader systems level since schools are not standalone entities. We've found in my experience with UCLA that you can go into a school and make a lot of changes in the building, but that if you don't also address some issues at a larger level, the district level or the offices that send directives to that school, a lot of the work falls on bare ground. That you need also to make some changes in a larger system. And that's why what you're doing here in Georgia is so exciting to me, because you're addressing the bigger picture. You're looking at a systemic change across the national picture. Just a couple of more. Sustainable change requires that individuals and organizations engage in continuous learning or data feedback loops. Trying something, learning from it, not just the students, but the teachers as well. Learn from it, study their data, and continue asking the questions. Powerful learning occurs best when research into how people learn informs pedagogy, and so I want to talk about that tonight. What we know about how the brain works, those are the things that should inform how we teach. And lastly, all students must have access to a quality curriculum that is imparted in equitable ways. And as you can imagine, in Los Angeles, that's a huge issue. The inequities across the schools is alarming, and so that's something that we all need to be paying attention to. And I'm sure that's an issue here as well. At UCLA SMP, we believe there's no single formula for success, but there are tools and processes that can help schools in their efforts. My organization endorses these principles because they've seen how they've empowered many schools to provide a better education for students. And what I'd like to do now, using that as an introduction, is talk about 4 key areas of reform that we think have made a real difference for a lot of schools. And those areas are brain research, constructivist theories in leading and learning, systems theory and learning organizations, and what we call backward planning or understanding by design. Let's start with the brain research. Technology in the last 30 years of the 20th century made it possible through research to learn things that forever changed the way we think about learning and schooling. Brain scanners like MRIs and PETs gave us new ways to understand and actually see inside the brain. We can watch neural pathways, we can watch the activity of the brain. A new kind of inner science has developed called neuroscience. This is an exciting interdisciplinary approach to questions about the brain, and it's had huge implications for teaching. It's very important that educators and educational institutions know this research, but more importantly, that they know its limitations. Action research done in real settings is the only reliable verification of brain theory. We need to become consumer literate in the field of brain research. That is, learn the major terms and sources of research, conduct our own action research, keep track of the results, and discuss this information with colleagues and the public. Beware of jumping to conclusions or falling for programs that guarantee to be, quote, brain compatible. Quick, easy answers to complex learning problems are most often wrong. So read as much as you can, learn as much as you can, but test it out in your own classroom or in your own settings. Don't believe everything you read. That said, there are some principles that have been more or less universally agreed upon by most educational researchers in the United States. These principles were first articulated in the 1990s by Renata and Jeffrey Kane, who analyzed hundreds of research studies in fields such as cognitive science, neuroscience, creativity, and psychology. These principles are the synthesis of their findings, and they have been tested in action research in hundreds of public schools. I want to share some of them with you, along with examples of implications for practice in the classroom. These may seem like common sense, like who wouldn't know that that's the truth? But I want you to think about whether or not these principles are in evidence in classrooms that you know about. So let's take a look at a few of them. The brain is a complex adaptive system. As a parallel processor, it can do several things at one time, and you know this. You can have your iPod on, you're at the computer, you're listening to the radio, you're talking to someone, you're doing 15 things at once. Learning involves focus, attention, and peripheral perception. We take in information all the time from all kinds of sources, both things we're focused on and things that are around us. Robert Sylvester, who is a brain researcher in the United States, has said, students are learning all the time. They may not be learning what you think you're teaching them, but they're learning all the time. They're gathering information from around them. So the implications from this are that an active classroom is one that engages students' curiosity and interest in learning. There are many learning centers, there are things stimulating all around the classroom, and that a variety of teaching strategies need to be engaged, need to be used to engage the students. A second principle of brain research: complex learning is enhanced by challenge and inhibited by stress. Undue stress causes the brain to actually physically downshift into survival strategies, fight or flight mode, completely abandoning higher order thinking skills. So if students are engaged in a classroom activity and you think it's going well and something happens that student gets overly stressed or afraid or angry, the learning stops, he goes into fight or flight mode. Challenge, on the other hand, enhances learning. And if you think about Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, where students are challenged just a bit beyond where they are, but not so much that it causes stress, that's where real learning can happen. There are implications related to this involving rewards and punishments, how we use those in classrooms, classroom climate, and school climate. And I think you've all been in schools where it's mainly a matter of fear. You're afraid of the rules, afraid of whatever. Those are not productive places for learning to be happening. The third principle I want to talk about is the brain is a social brain. It develops better in concert with other brains. The implications for this are that group work, things like Socratic seminar, discussions, debates, cooperative learning, your conversations with your neighbors are all ways that stimulate learning. When we have to do something verbally with what we're learning, the learning is more likely to stay in our memory. Let's look at a few more. The search for meaning is innate. Humans search for meaning, and meaning is more important than just information. The implications for this are that students seek personal meaning in their work. We need to maximize on the mind's natural curiosity. They want answers to bigger questions, and they want work that seems to be connected to what they're really about as human beings and about their real life. So when we ask them to do things and they don't see any connection between that and what the real reality is, they have a really hard time sticking to it, as we all do. The next one, the search for meaning comes through patterning. Having said that the brain needs newness and stimulation and curiosity around it, this is also true, that there's a need for stability and familiarity. Routines reduce stress and build a foundation for safety that then allows for creativity and higher order thinking. So a classroom that's run with a certain amount of routine, students know what to expect, there's no guessing about it. Chaos, either physical or emotional, tends to discourage learning. So it's a good idea to have a routine, a set pattern in the room, and within that pattern there can be a lot of stimulation and curiosity going on. One related to this is that emotions are critical to patterning, and they drive our attention, meaning, and memory. Emotions are crucial to the storage and recall of information. There's been a lot of work done on the amygdala, which is the very deep in the center of the brain, the center of emotion. When that amygdala triggers that the brain is in trouble or angry or whatever, it changes the way the brain reacts to information coming in. So that can be a good thing or a bad thing. When you can connect what you're teaching to an emotional level with the students,